for teens. The most important piece of advice that I can give you is to be an opportunist. You can't predict all of the opportunities that will come your way. Things that you never thought would interest you can suddenly jump to the top of your list of interests. So be prepared to follow those interests wherever they lead.
No. Real advice for teens. Don't let other people get a head start on you. You need to know exactly what you want to do early on. Work to gain skills in that area so that when you're competing with other people, you will have the advantage of having honed your craft for a long time.
No. It's not like that at all. It's important to not get too hung up on grades. What is tested in school is not a good predictor of what will get you ahead in life. The real-world problems never come with an answer key. Being comfortable with uncertainty and ambiguity is a more important life skill than memorization.
Yes, but your grades are the way everyone will judge how smart you are. It's essential to make a good first impression. If you don't do well, you can kiss the idea of ever getting into a good school or getting a good job goodbye.
It's not grades. It's important to be yourself, to do the things that interest you, not some generic list of what a good student is. It's better to choose to do something odd and unconventional rather than what people expect of you.
But if you don't check all the boxes that it takes to be a good student, you won't have a chance against the people who do. It's more important to look good on a college application than it is to make friends or get a good night's sleep. The things you do in high school will affect you for the rest of your life. Even one slip up could negatively impact you forever.
This is crazy. You know that it's the people who follow their unconventional passions in life who get ahead and make a difference. And what's this all about grades? I've never emphasized grades. It's so much more important to understand the material or to be able to think critically.
That is not what I hear. I mean, all I ever hear is that the higher the GPA, the better. 1 or 2 Bs might be okay, but if you let yourself get Cs, that can be really bad, and it's on your transcript forever. I mean, it's important to learn, yes, but your priority needs to be getting into a good university, and to do that, you need straight A's in hard classes. At my school, everyone knows A means average, B is below average, C is can't eat dinner, D, don't come home, and F is find a new family.
Is this what teenagers these days actually believe?
Yes. Why is it that your advice is so different from everyone else's? And how can you be sure that it's even relevant when we're growing up in such different circumstances?
I guess I have a hard time believing that they're really that different. I mean, am I just out of touch?
I think you may be. I mean, schools are more competitive now. And while maybe back in the day, less than perfect could get you into an impressive school, that's just no longer the case.
But perfect is an illusion. Everybody is less than perfect, now and when I was a teenager. And I guess maybe it's just that now everybody's gone nuts for the name brand schools.
Geez, Mom, you went to MIT and Stanford. It's kind of hard to take you seriously telling me not to worry about name brand schools. Plus, I find it hard to believe that going to a world-renowned school doesn't hold any weight beyond college.
Fair enough. I mean, I'd be a bit of a hypocrite if I said it didn't matter at all. But in the long run, people will judge you on what you know, on your actions, on the content of your character. This is beyond that first transient impression. School, university should be about finding your community, finding your tribe.
There you go again, Mom. I mean, the reality is that where we live in Silicon Valley, being a good student is looked at as if it's the equivalent of some sort of stat point system in a video game where your chances of success rise with a linear function of your GPA plus your performance in sports plus bonus points for community service. Why not just play this game by the rules?
Because you will end up in the wrong place. Students trying to take on a set of interests that they think a college admissions counselor will like better than their actual real interests are really just hiding themselves from the people who are in the best position to help them find a good fit. You call it a game, but who wins at that game? It's not you.
Doesn't seem like we can win. I mean, I think that one of the main issues that myself and kids my age face is this mantra that if we don't live up to these certain standards of perfection, that we'll never be able to find success. And once these toxic ideas get into the heads of a few kids, they take on a life of their own within the community. They grow until it's the only thing we think matters. And when people perceive themselves as having failed, it can drive them to self-harm or suicide. Our town has already lost one kid to suicide this year. I know several people who have thought about it, and a few who have tried, but thankfully not succeeded. I come from a place where kids kill themselves to be perfect, and then sometimes actually kill themselves when they realize they can't be.
This is the thing that is so terrifying as a parent. It feels like we're on a high wire and there's no net. When your father and I see you struggling with all of this, we so want to help, but we don't know how. And it feels like one wrong move and there'll be deadly consequences, and we're going to live the rest of our lives wondering how we could have prevented the loss of our child. We so want to help you through this time, but how do we do that without smothering you?
Just make sure we can always talk about it.
Yeah.
All right. Full disclosure, this isn't how our conversations usually go. This is aggregated from several.
Yes. We don't generally talk this long at a stretch about that hard a subject.
Yeah. For a bit more context, I'm a high school student at Los Altos High School in Silicon Valley. Everyone there is crazy smart and consequently crazy stressed out about living up to the area we come from.
And for my part, I, like so many of my peers, am struggling to figure out how do you parent a teen, especially in what seems like this new hyper-competitive world, which doesn't resemble what it was when I was growing up. There's no manual for this.
No, but we have talked about these things: identity, measuring worth, and suicide.
And we've stumbled through many other fraught topics, from sexuality, inequality, gender, Me Too, to living in the bubble that we live in. We just weren't quite prepared to talk about all of these in front of you.
God, no. Suicide was hard enough.
Yes.
But we do want to talk to you about communication in general.
And although we're not going to claim that we do it perfectly, somehow we have been stumbling through all of these different topics, even through the period of time in which parent-teen relationships become notoriously contentious. And we thought that was worth looking at, taking apart, examining how is it that we manage to do this.
One of the important things that we do as a family is we all have dinner together every night. And this keeps up a good baseline of communication. But that isn't it. That's not where we have conversations like the one we just had. Nothing that earth-shaking ever happens at dinner.
And it really shouldn't. We learned the hard way that the hard subjects do not work at the dinner table. When you are putting your kid on the spot in a situation where they need to respond, it's unfair, it erodes their trust in you, and it's potentially explosive.
It can feel like you're trapped, like you have to look them in the eye and answer right there at the dinner table.
Yes. So why does this backfire? As a parent, when you want to talk about the hard subjects, you think about it, and you plan, and then you spring it on your kid, and you expect them to be able to be in that same space with you and to be able to answer and to be able to think about it. It's really just not fair to catch them by surprise.
Much better times to talk about these sorts of things are when we're working together on something. A good example I can think of is a sculpture of a head that my mother and I made together about a year ago. I made the 3D model, she cut out the pieces on her laser cutter, and we worked on it for hours piecing it together. During that time, we had a lot of good conversations about the college mythology that we played out for you earlier. We're still talking about that.
Yeah, working on the head allowed us to fall in and out of the conversation over several days. Working in parallel allowed us to break it up because we could talk about the thing that we were working on and then go back to talking about the college stuff. And Natalie had an opportunity to think about it and answer whether that was in 10 minutes or 10 days. And the key thing is to be patient. These topics don't go away.
And we collaborate a lot, which I think is why we're able to talk a lot. There's the head, for example. We've also worked together on TED Talks, where I did the illustrations for the slides and she did the talking, though now she's making me do some talking too, as you can see, to playing video games together, like World of Warcraft, making movies with my friends, and most recently, we've been training to become EMTs together, first responders. I think our relationship is pretty well summed up by the Mohr family motto, everything worth doing, or anything worth doing is worth overdoing.
Yes. But your parallel collaboration doesn't need to be as crazy as ours. It could be something as simple as doing chores together, or sports, or working out together. You've probably experienced this in a long car drive. The car drive is not about the communication, it's about going somewhere together. But it creates that space where you're allowed to be able to shift in and out of a topic.
And I'll be honest, sometimes I hate it. This parallel space doesn't magically make things like suicide fun to talk about. Your kid probably isn't ever going to be looking forward to having a conversation like that. But that doesn't mean we don't appreciate having had them. I mean, my friends are amazed at some of the things that I've been able to talk to my parents about, and I know for a fact that I'm grateful.
And in the process of overdoing all of our various projects, this led us to another observation, which is we were most successful talking in a situation where we were learning something together, rather than me teaching something to Natalie.
Yes, our second aha moment is that teacher and taught is typically the wrong dynamic for these sorts of conversations. It's not easy to open up if you don't feel like you're on even footing. I'm not often in the mood for a lecture or an interrogation, especially if there's something I'm really upset about. And teaching really brings out the lecture in my mom, I'll be honest.
Yes, that's fair enough. But like the not springing things on your kids, going to some place where you're learning together is on us as parents. As adults, we tend to find it safe to wrap ourselves in authority. And when we create that safe space for ourselves, we don't leave that safe space for our kids. And it can be a very vulnerable position to put yourself in the position of learning, but it really opens things up and allows for more communication.
And you don't necessarily have to go far for this kind of vulnerability. I mean, one example that I can think for us is playing video games together.
And so now you're saying, oh, okay, as a parent, I need to play video games in order to talk to my child. And that's not quite, yeah, maybe, sort of, what we're saying.
What we're really saying is go where your kids' interests are.
And your kids' interests aren't necessarily going to be yours. I can't think how many parents I have heard lamenting the fact that their kids waste all of this time on these frivolous activities without them ever actually having tried those activities themselves to see what it is that their kids love about them so much.
And it really matters. I mean, when my friends hear that my parents not only are supportive of me doing things like playing video games and all the art that I like to do and, just all the things that I enjoy, they're not only supportive, but they're actually willing to go to where I am and try these things and see what I like so much about them. They're surprised, and they really shouldn't be. It shouldn't be shocking.
Yeah. I mean, we should see things that our kids love doing that we don't understand as an opportunity. Because, as parents, wanting to connect is really coming from a very good place. But when we try to do it, we start to become caricatures of ourselves often, from helicopter parents to tiger parents to snowplow parents, where we don't let kids make their own decisions because we don't want them to fail. And if we don't let them fail, we don't let them learn. So how, kiddo, as parents, how do we break out of this?
I think the most important thing for me has been that my parents have always supported me in the things that I'm really passionate about, even when my goals aren't 100% clear to me yet. There are no parenting advice books about your kid. I mean, we don't know your kid. You have to figure them out for yourself. You have to give them space to tell you who they are. And in the process of me figuring out who this amazing being is that is my child, we really came to the realization that best communication happens if you don't ambush your kids, if you engage in parallel projects, ideally where you're learning something as well, and if you're willing to be vulnerable and go to where your kids' interests are. It's not magic. It won't happen immediately, but this is where all of the hard conversations have crept in around the edges for us. And you want to do this often enough so it's not about anything other than being together and hopefully learning together. Try the things we like. Watching my mom struggle with something certainly makes her seem more human. Watching her get super into character in role-playing games, not exactly sure what that makes her seem.
Like a dork, perhaps?
Your words, not mine. Though I do have to say, sometimes when you go so overboard, you do manage to embarrass me a little bit.
Embarrassment is simply one of the services that I provide as your parent.
Right. Yeah. Well, speaking of services that you provide, could we maybe talk about how nervous I was to do this talk in front of so many people?
Sure. We could do that. How about right now?
Maybe not somewhere quite so public, I was thinking.
Okay. We'll do it later. I promise. We'll make time for each other.
Yeah, we will.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's walk off.
That way.